What would you do if you couldn't trust your own mind? Unfortunately, 1 in 5 Canadians will know the answer to this. Mental diseases and illnesses are not rare, and you probably know more people than you think you do that have them. Either they're hiding them really well, or they've just gone undiagnosed. Today, lots of treatments are available, but in the past, it hasn't been this way. People with mental illnesses that actually came forward about them had to endure things like skull drills, bloodletting to let out the bad blood, ice-cold baths taken by force until they lost consciousness, psychosurgery, electroshock therapy, unfit living conditions in mental asylums, and the list goes on and on. These people were not treated fairly at all. It was not a good time. In Timothy Findley's novel, The Last of the Crazy People, several characters exhibit signs and symptoms of classic mental illnesses. Now, these characters did not exist in today's time period, but in the 1960s, when the whole revolution of the mental health care system was taking place. So they weren't so lucky to have the treatments that we have today. They had to risk the unethical treatments of the past. So yeah, let's take a look. The story is basically about a young boy named Hooker. Yes, Hooker, and his last summer with his dysfunctional family. Hooker tries to keep his break from school as normal as possible, despite his mother isolating herself from the family, a father and aunt obsessed with the family's death and disintegration, and an alcoholic poet for a brother. The family encounters many obstacles over the summer, such as a failed birthday party for Hooker's mother, his brother getting a girl pregnant, the death of Hooker's pregnant cat, Clementine, and Hooker's brother's suicide. In the end, Hooker becomes overwhelmed by the family's troubles and decides that it would be best for them to be dead. So he steals a gun and shoots everyone in his family, except the maid, and is sentenced to a mental institution. So, like I said before, a lot of characters in this novel exhibit symptoms of mental illness. First of all, there's Hooker. I think Hooker is a psychopath. Psychopaths are really, really unempathetic towards like everybody, and they are also really smart and charismatic. In the beginning of the novel, Hooker brings home a straight-A report card, showing that he's pretty smart, and when he meets people, like his dad's friends, they're all like, oh, what a good boy you have there, he's so cool, we like him, showing that, you know, that's a sign of a psychopath. As far as the empathy goes, he doesn't have any. I mean, like, he has no emotions whatsoever. When his dad sees him for the first time in the novel, he says straight up, this kid has no sense of humor. And additionally, when Gilbert, Hooker's brother, kills Hooker's cat, he doesn't even care, like, at all. And he goes out into the field and buries the cat. And while he buries the cat, he's just singing a song, like, no big deal, he's just singing a song. He's a happy kid. And then the rest of his family was like, you know, Hooker, like, it's okay to miss your cat. And Hooker's like, I never said that I even missed her. Like, everyone has to die eventually, what are you talking about? I don't care. Another incident in the novel where Hooker did not show the typical characteristics of a 12-year-old, as far as empathy goes, is when his cat brought home a really, really disfigured, mangled squirrel that it had gotten a hold of. And Hooker was like, I have to kill it now because it's not, like, it's in pain. So he takes it out to the field and he hits it with a shovel, and he hits it, he makes a mess, and instead of bawling his eyes out like any normal 12-year-old kid would, he feels like taking a nap. So, like, yeah, this kid's not, something's up. Later in the novel, when Gilbert, his brother, commits suicide, he doesn't really even miss his brother, like, at all. He's not affected by the death, but more about the whole idea of death. And instead of thinking about his brother, he just thinks about dead bodies in general and, like, heaven and stuff. And he doesn't even care that his brother's gone. So, like, yeah, this kid has no emotions. He's, like, this kid's freaky. He is definitely not normal. There's also a lot of reference to alcoholism in the book, especially with Hooker's brother, Gilbert. Gilbert is rarely ever seen without a drink in his hand. In fact, this is like the first time ever And he's always found, like, drinking his beer from the bottle, drinking with supper, telling the maid he could stand a beer, drinking in the bathtub, partying, vomiting on the carpet because he's, like, super hungover, drinking whiskey while reading. Like, yeah, he drinks all the time. Hooker's dad, Nicholas, drinks, like, every time he comes home from work. And whenever there's bad news, like about Gilbert getting that girl pregnant, he was like, oh, Rosetta, get the sherry, because we have to drink now. The maid's friend, I'll get the maid. The maid's friend, Alberta, this isn't Alberta, this is the maid, she drinks, like, all the time. Whenever the maid, Iris, goes over to her house, she's like, here, like, have a drink. Drinking makes you feel good. Yay, drinking. So yeah, there's, like, a lot of alcoholism in the book. Depression is another mental illness that plays a big role in The Last of the Crazy People. Jessica, Hooker's mother, seems to be the character that exhibits this the best. She's always in her room, she's always down, she's lethargic all the time, she barely eats, she sleeps a lot or can't sleep at all classic signs of depression. She can't control her irritability and she's always negative. Jessica even exhibits some signs of a special type of depression called postpartum depression, which is a depression that occurs after you birth a child. It's basically the same as depression, except you just hate your kid and you neglect your duties as a mother, which Jessica does in the book. She births a stillborn child that she hates from the beginning. She thinks that this child's going to fix all her marital problems, but she just hates the kid. And then after that, she just locks herself up in her room and doesn't care for her 2 living children anymore, and basically just quits the whole being a mom thing. Rosetta, Hooker's aunt who lives with the family, sometimes shows signs of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is basically when you have, like, a need, like, its tension builds up until you actually complete something. And a lot of these times it's making sure that, like, your shirt's even or that the place is spotless. And after Jessica neglected her duties as a mother and started, like, isolating herself and stuff, Rosetta stepped up and she was like, yeah, I'm on it. And she started cleaning the house every day, all day. And she would make sure that it was gleaming and glistening and that the house was perfectly clean all the time. All the time. She can also often, she adjusts her bonnet and her dress in the novel, which kind of shows that she's even doing it subconsciously. So we don't really get a lot from Rosetta's point of view in the book. Like, we don't really know if she actually has, like, a compulsion to do these things or if she's just a neat freak. But the whole idea that she actually, like, fixes her bonnet and adjusts her dress and makes sure that things are, like, perfect all the time without even realizing it kind of gives us a hint that she is OCD. It is clear that there are lots of examples of mental illnesses in Timothy Findley's novel The Last of the Crazy People. What's really, really interesting, though, is that Timothy Findley himself went through depression and brings that into his novels as a common theme for all of them. He also has stated that both himself and his father battled alcohol abuse, which is another theme in The Last of the Crazy People. The author's life and the different mental illnesses in the novel are really, really interesting when we look at the time period that occurred in, when it was kind of uncertain whether the mental institution that Hooker ended up in the end would be a good one that is undergoing changes for the better, or if it was one that used the unethical treatments that we've discussed earlier. Although Hooker's decision to murder his family was a bit of overkill, it does kind of make one wonder what they would prefer. I mean, would you rather take your chance and go to a mental institution, or would you want to keep on suffering? Or, there's the third option, which is for the suffering to be over. Maybe Hooker actually was doing his family a favor